what are these devices doing for you in terms of the data or the notifications? It's not just the shiny thing on the wall. It's not just the convenience of the code. It's actually driving value for your business.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. As we transition to our panel today, as we've said in the previous sessions, we've had a track sponsor with PointCentral, and so we're going to kick off and hear from PointCentral, give them an opportunity to introduce the company. We've got Mike Branam from PointCentral that's on our panel today. So before we get into the panel session, give him a chance to give you a bit more of an overview about what PointCentral does and the value they can deliver in multifamily. So Mike, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Brandon. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all on this bright Orlando morning. So, hey, I want this to be more informative than anything. You know, I know that it's the track sponsor sometimes has that opportunity to provide a commercial. I don't want it to be that. Everyone's enjoying their breakfast. Just want to, really try to be as informative as I possibly can, because there's a lot going on out in the space right now, which I think everybody has seen, during our time here. And then when you're back at your desk and you get the emails, and there's just so much technology coming at you these days that sometimes it's hard to sift through the noise. So you look at the word scramble here, and that's probably like a day in the life of you all, right? And our other attendees that are here. So what we want to do is just try to how do we take everything that's happening and sort of make sense of it all, because you're trying to either build the best property you can for your asset owners and for your eventual residents. You have staff that's working in these places, and so how do we really take what's happening in the tech landscape in multifamily, in build to rent, in short-term rentals, and again make sense of it so it makes sense for your business. Otherwise, what can happen, and we've seen this, and we've had to sort of rescue this on a number of occasions, is if you take sort of the latest point solution and keep adding it and adding it and adding it, now you have 30 different applications, and you have sort of this tech nightmare, this kind of Rubik's Cube that you're having to solve because this doesn't talk to that, and this person doesn't use that. And so, what we want to do is really work towards a more unified solution that drives value for our stakeholders. Okay, so at PointCentral, we provide smart property technology solutions for the rental landscape. We're a subsidiary of Alarm.com, which has been delivering this type of technology for over 25 years. Think of us as Alarm.com, but for rentals. And so we want to make sense of all the tech that's out there and drive value. And it's really important to do that, especially in this environment, with a provider that's experienced, safe, and reliable. So give me 30 seconds to humble brag, and then I'll transition to more information. But I want to take that 30 seconds because in this really fast-moving landscape, there are a number of providers that are likely trying to get in front of you, and there's a lot of wonderful tech that's out there. I think the unique thing about smart property tech is that it's one of those very rare products and technologies that it doesn't just touch the building, but it touches those who live and work there and everything around it. So if something goes wrong, the phone lights up fast, right? And if if another group maybe goes away, or if their strategy was to get acquired and it sort of gets folded into something different, you might have a bigger problem than the problem you were trying to solve initially, right? So we believe very, very strongly that having a provider that has been doing this for a number of years, and this is the core business, that's sort of like the first box that we would suggest you check is, what's the longevity look like? What does the track record look like? What is the company's strategy? And we feel very proud of what we've delivered at Alarm.com and PointCentral. So humble brag over, but just sort of an important note to point out as we get things going. We talked about the point solutions. We call this the product wheel. Rather than have kind of tech fragmentation, we want to deliver a unified platform that touches on a lot of the most important elements of the business, whether that's from the asset owner's perspective or from the staff or the residents. So you kind of get an idea here on the product wheel, and I think we used every shade of blue possible, what type of products and services that we can deliver in a unified solution. And so think of us as the software, And then what we want to do is have our channel partners, one of which is ADT here at Noel, which he'll have a chance to chat through more today, is they'll deliver that installation and that service and that support, right? So we want to just marry the best of both to ensure that you're getting everything that you really need to pull off what can be a really complicated implementation and make it simple. And that's the whole point of smart. If it's not simple, it's not smart. And so there's that buzz term of smart this and smart that. Like, we have to almost define what smart is now, because there's so much of it out there. We want to deliver that in a unified, simple way. So let's talk about a couple ways that we can go about this. Again, this is at the enterprise level. So we know that the folks in seats here, they're not just building a single home, they're building communities, and those communities can be delivered across the country. So we want to deliver enterprise solutions that support that model, right? In most cases, it starts with access management. Different types of assets have different types of access needs. We really saw this sort of inflection point amidst COVID when more folks had to work from home. We had to figure out self-guided tours to allow prospective residents to tour the building when staffing might have been challenged or mandated to go home. So there's this opportunity to kind of solve for access as a whole, which is something that we're very focused on, is not just access management, but safe and secure access that your teams can count on. And some of that comes from the gate or the intercom. And so we offer intercom solutions via a mobile directory that's just very simple and straightforward. We know that we've all been to properties where like the legacy intercom box looks like an old Star Wars robot, right? Like, it's just, those things can be displaced quickly. So we also want a future-proof technology to deliver very simple solutions that are scalable for you and your teams. You don't have to displace and rip and replace every 5 years, or just leave it there and put a sign on it, right? So access management as a whole, we think of that as not just common areas and entry to specific buildings, but also that kind of pass-through intercom or that gate to ensure who's coming through and that they're authorized to do so, whether you do have staffing on site or if you've got more of a shared services or centralized model where you may not have daily staff that's on site. The in-unit piece is, we're kind of working our way through the building, right? The in-unit piece, or the smart home piece, it's kind of the simple one. It's what a lot of you probably have in your homes, what we have in our homes, that smart lock, that smart thermostat, delivering what the residents want in terms of value, depending on the market, depending on kind of time of year or where we're at economically. Is there a rent lift opportunity there? In a lot of cases, yes. But in reality, if we're trying to put heads in beds and drive value, the technology amenity is really playing out as the most popular amenity right now and has been for several years. Residents are actually bringing tech into properties, and in some cases saying, hey, can I put this lock on the door? Can I put this thermostat on the wall? No, you can't. But we have one for you, right? And so smart property tech is something residents will ask for, if not demand, but it has to drive value for you as the operator and owner as well. So we can't tell you how many times we've had groups that have said, okay, it's cool that we went like with the smart apartment, but the value that's driving us, because we're getting alerts, it's measurable in terms of dollars and cents, because you're not just providing a smart thermostat. What you're doing is putting a thermostat on the wall that's now going into energy savings mode when there's a vacancy, or even better yet, if someone were to leave for a week or so during an occupied state, what if they don't touch the thermostat and you have like a critical weather event? And so you don't get that call now that pipes broke and that there's damage that's taken place. So there's this kind of well-rounded value prop, whether your stakeholder is the resident, the property staff, or you're the owner or operator of the asset. We talked a little bit about energy management, but when we take our models of maintenance and historically said, man, this is really reactive. Something breaks, we fix. Something breaks, we fix. It doesn't have to be that way, right? So when you start getting proactive notifications, it becomes this preventative model. So you don't get the resident that's walking down saying, I'm not paying this because you have a slow leak somewhere, or because your system's running too hard. We can provide HVAC alerts in advance when something's taking a little bit of time to reach a certain set point. So now we're getting ahead of challenges, and that's really, that's how I define smart, in terms of smart tech. Is what is it delivering to you in terms of what are these devices doing for you in terms of the data or the notifications? It's not just the shiny thing on the wall. It's not just the convenience of the code, it's actually driving value for your business. And water is just the same. I haven't met an owner or operator that hasn't had sort of this nightmare story around water. My own nightmare story is learning of a community that had a leak come down from a closet and wrecked somebody's like $1 million baseball card collection. And like that's like I was a card collector growing up, so like when I heard like what cards were destroyed, I fell out of my chair. Right, so like that can't be replaced. Right, water management is something that everyone has to figure out as they go along, but it doesn't have to be like again a reactive type of a model. Let's find out through sensors when water takes place. Let's notify the right stakeholders right when it happens, rather than after the damage is done. The silent killer of water is maybe that toilet that's running for 30 days because no one's been in the apartment or checked it. Now there's an opportunity where flow detection can again alert maintenance at the right time to take care of that. So again, we're saving on dollars and cents by implementing this technology. Self-guided tours. This is table stakes at this point, especially with shared services and centralization being a critical operating component of the business now. Again, let's just expand the hours, whether it's sort of a way to supplement your leasing staff, or if it's a way to say, look, we're going 100% self-guided because that's how the prospects want to see the property, and we'll repurpose leasing staff to focus on community engagement and retention. Self-guided tours is the great enabler of that, and it's all part of this unified platform, which we like to communicate. And again, folks, it's all built for the enterprise. So whether you're looking at this as a way to put it on a single building or a single community or the entire portfolio, we can really slice this and dice this based on who your stakeholders are, how you want to see logins, and reporting. So it's really important that you have a provider that grows with you as you grow and scale with the technology. Integrations are key. Again, you all have things that are flying at you on a daily basis, but every group that we work with tends to have a core software that they're working in, whether that's your primary property management software and or whether that's like a CRM that you're working with to try to sort of follow a prospective resident through their journey, via guest card and shared calendars. We want to integrate with those things. So if your staff lives in one of these types of solutions, that's great. They can stay there. And then we work behind the scenes to provide informative information when something happens, right? So we oftentimes when we go on site, we see this sort of tension from leasing staff. It's like, do I have to figure out another login? Do I have to learn another thing? These folks have enough on their plates. It's sort of a help you help them type of a thing. Let the technology sort of be this sort of task manager for them or this job aid for them while they work on other critical things throughout the property because they've got enough on their plates, right? We're kind of rounding third in this morning's hopefully informative session, right before we get to our panel. But one of the key emphasis that we're looking at in this is not just smart tech. It's safe tech, and with that in mind, if we're providing safer spaces in our places for our residents and staff, there's a lot of value in that. It's not just marketable. Yeah, it is. But like how? Like what are you doing to provide more safety for your buildings and for your residents and staff? We have safety button technology, and this is wildly popular in the student housing segment. Thank goodness my daughter is not in college yet, but when that day comes, I'm paying for this, right? So this is walk along technology, when she's leaving the library at 2 a.m., wink, wink, and perhaps isn't feeling safe, the safety button technology is walk along, right? So that you press the button, a live safety agent is on that call with you until you feel safe. And if the unthinkable happens and that phone is detached from the holder, then there's a pin automatically set where that where an incident took place. Okay, that's physical safety. From a wellness standpoint, there's also mental and emotional safety. If we get outside the box and really think about providing safety technology for our residents and staff, if someone's not feeling well mentally or emotionally, this is still an option, and this safety agent can connect you with the right person or team to ensure that the unthinkable doesn't happen. So this is tech that's just doing different things in smart thermostats and smart locks. Those are the enablers for all this. Now, when you start working with partners that can solve for all of this, you're not only delivering a lot of value, but you're delivering peace of mind, which keeps residents, first, it gets them there, but it keeps them there as well. And this tech isn't just for college campuses. This is also for, they could be on a vacation with their family and just not really know where they're at, and just to feel safe, press that button going from a parking garage to the hotel. Okay. So again, by moving into some of your communities, you're delivering a safe technology solution for them. It's really a game changer. As it work, press the button, it follows you, connects you to a professional operator. There you go. It's as simple as that. One last piece to my part of this presentation this morning is video solutions. How do we leverage video? And some folks will sort of put video into this bucket of like Big Brother, and I don't think that's the case. I think we're now using video solutions to, again, supplement either on-site security and staff, or really kind of repurpose some of those staff members to ensure that video can now solve challenges for you from a safety standpoint. We've got a really interesting technology. We'll show you a video clip here as we get on our panel today, where our AI Talkdown solution can flash a red and a blue light, but also the AI tech can recognize you and say, you in the blue blazer, you're not supposed to be here. That's not a human being that's having to do that and watch all day or be alerted. The AI mechanism, which you can actually sort of pull some levers on what kind of voice you want. Is it male, female? Is it a firm voice? Is it a softer voice? So you can deploy that type of mechanism to ensure that maybe someone's not in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? Maybe the pool is closed off at 10 o'clock. You don't want anybody there. Somebody's taking advantage of the dumpster and they're dumping their sofas or whatever the case may be. You can prevent this because there's costs behind all of that. And these costs can be mitigated, if not reduced or eliminated, by just having video solutions deployed in the right locations with AI technology behind it. Some of the monitoring solutions, these are kind of cool when you have either commercial plus residential, or if you're just trying to get an idea of like kind of what's happening in the leasing office. When is there high traffic? Is the pickleball court being used from 12 to 2, but it's sort of sparse after 5 p.m.? There's just different things that you can look at from a development standpoint as you plan for amenities to figure out like, where's the traffic? What's being utilized? This was a good idea 2 years ago. What's the utilization actually been? Because we want to plan it for the next project, right? So take advantage of video and the data that comes from video, not just to provide safeguards and security and safety, but also real informative data for either the next project or if you have to repurpose an amenity space. And last but not least, kind of that remote video monitoring. We think about construction cycles. We know that there's valuable materials that are on site. You may have 24/7 monitoring. You may have a human being sort of perimeter monitoring. Let's use video again as a supplement or to completely displace that model by saying, hey, let's put mechanisms in place to ensure nothing's happening, at the construction site after odd hours. Copper's always stolen, lumber's taken. There's value there. There's valuable tools. So we want to make sure that we're providing solutions to ensure that the project is safe throughout the cycle of the project, pre-construction, post-construction, and obviously at occupancy cycle. So, again, that unified platform, that product wheel, it's really important to really look at a unified solution that can solve a number of problems and deliver safe, secure solutions for all stakeholders involved in the equation, and really try to avoid that tech fragmentation, because then your IT folks will say, and there's a lot of tech coming, like what do we really need to solve problems, because you don't want to create more problems than the initial challenge you're trying to solve for. So I do appreciate everyone, your time and attention this morning, and hopefully this is a nice segue for our panel here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for supporting this track and being the track sponsor. As we jump into this, we'll do introductions. Mike, unless you've got some additional stuff you want to introduce about yourself, we'll work our way down. We'll go from Zach, and then we'll come to Noel and go from there. So Zach, if you wouldn't mind telling your group, you've been in the audience for the last 3 sessions, but introduce yourself, company you're with, and kind of your market space.
Sure. So Zach Longmore, Nehemiah Housing. We do affordable housing starting in Brooklyn, New York, and expanding now up and down the East Coast. We specialize, we're not for profit, and so we really try to focus on urban context and communities that perhaps been underserved.
Noel.
Good morning. A lot of familiar faces here, so glad to see you guys. Noel Arvizu. I'm the Director of Sales for ADT Multifamily, and we specialize in creating a ecosystem inside the unit for you guys. However, our expertise is also outside of the unit where we work in the common areas. So things like that Mike just discussed, whether it's video surveillance, access control.
And for any of you that are new here, I'll introduce myself. My name's Branam Savage. I've been the moderator for the multifamily track. In the previous sessions, I've said, like, I'm not an expert in building. I'm just up here to get people to chat and to hopefully end on time. But I will add some of my background for this particular session because I feel like I might be able to actually add some value in this one. The first 20 years of my career was in the electronic security space. I've worked in operations, technology, customer experience roles at some of the fastest growing and some of the largest security companies. Early in my career, we were a dealer for ADT. I worked for a large company that was acquired by ADT at one point. And my focus was primarily in residential, single home. And so I've seen the technology evolve over the last 25 years in this space. And just to be a little bit of a testimonial for Alarm.com and PointCentral, I think I first met the Alarm.com team probably 2003, 2004, 5 years in. In 2008 and 9, we were the biggest customer of Alarm.com when I was at a rapidly growing company. I will say that it was interesting over the years to see other companies try to emulate what Alarm.com was doing in terms of having a back end in the security space. And security, you've got to be on your game all the time. You've got hundreds of thousands, millions of customers that are counting on you to be able to respond when some of the worst things in life happen. Someone breaks in, your house is on fire, those type of things. And you can't have an outage. You have to be responsive. You have to have a tool that works. And Alarm.com has always been a trusted partner for the companies I've worked for, and has just been rock solid. While we've seen some of these other companies come and go. And I think you talked about, there's a lot of companies have tried to do security and haven't been able to stick in for the long run. And I think you talk about 25 years Alarm.com. When was ADT started?
Some of you guys might know. You guys passed the
yeah.
1874. Yes.
They've been around for a little while as well. So definitely you have some great experience, some very trusted partners. In my experience, when we were doing just single family homes and some of the companies I was at, 15 years ago were some of the first to start offering smart locks and thermostats and video cameras. And that was complicated to start off just to do it in a single home. And at the time to think like, could you do that in a multifamily environment where you're delivering value at every single one of those homes, and then have that additional level for the operator and owner to be able to manage that, to not only deliver value to the individual residents, but then to be able to have value for the property owner from the information and data that's there. If I wanted one company to be able to be the back end and understand it, would certainly be Alarm.com. And 2 weeks ago, I was in Vegas at the International Security Convention, because I still do a lot of stuff in that industry, and Alarm.com is continuing to grow and seeing new features and acquisitions and making their portfolio more valuable. PointCentral being one of those subsidiaries that has certainly grown. So in addition to that, I'll also say one of my other hats I wear is I work for a software company that uses artificial intelligence, and I'd say I'm an evangelist about AI, and it's fascinating. We'll see some of the stuff today of how AI is helping make these tools better. So I haven't said a lot about myself, but I feel like I can probably add a little bit to the conversation today, and I'm excited about this one. So this is going to be a little bit of an eye chart. I know that I said before that a lot of the sessions have really kind of focused, maybe have felt like they've been focused at some of the higher end class in multifamily. Just to set the stage here, that security certainly spans every single class. There are opportunities between different of the focus areas you see in that first column. We got Class A, and the second column, Class B and C, build to rent, student housing. And so as you think about your particular company and needs, you can do a quick scan over there. We'll leave this up here as we kind of talk about some of our first questions. Zach, how is security changing at the property and unit level, and how do resident expectations differ across asset classes from what you've seen in your career and particularly the company you're at right now?
It's transitioning kind of slowly. I think you can look at our portfolio and some of the older properties. still have hard keys. And those old boxes you talked about. Some of the newer properties now we have the video doorbells and fob access control. In the affordable housing space, we're not quite up to the cutting edge technology yet. But as far as resident desires, they want all the same things that the luxury assets have. And so we're going to try to get there eventually. But I think we had talked about earlier, there's kind of a curve. And as you work your way down the asset class and the age of the buildings, you're further down the curve. But eventually, everything kind of comes together. So we'll never be at the top of the curve. But as things start getting cheaper and more accessible to our asset class, we'll try to incorporate as much as we can.
Mike, across your experience and as you see some of these different asset classes, how do you see the security implement shift between some of these classes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we want to start everything with what challenges are you trying to solve for, and asset classes. What I like about that is build to rent is much different than maybe student housing, which could be different than garden style apartments. So I think in our roles, it's not to try to say this is one size fits all. It's really trying to understand the asset type and what unique challenges or opportunities come with that asset class. So build to rent is a great example where you say, okay, this is typically single family detached, multiple bedrooms, high likelihood that there's families that are in the space, right? So it's just a different circumstance for a family of 5 than if it's one of us living in an apartment by ourselves, right? So there's this more uptake in monitored security in the build to rent environment, high uptake in video doorbell. People want to see who's out there, who's knocking on the door. Is it a neighbor? Is it a friend? Is it a stranger? Type of a dynamic, and there's more adoption of cameras. Maybe backyard, just to ensure there's some safeguards there. Or if you look at student housing, totally different environment where, probably if you're kind of closed doors, where they're not exposed to the elements, there's probably not as much uptake in monitored security, but there is a heck of a lot of adoption on safety button. Okay, so that's a different sort of security and safety dynamic than that of build to rent. And then in the affordable class, there could be areas where maybe there's kind of a challenged community that's being gentrified, and there's some changes taking place in the property where there have been some upgrades, but they're still trying to kind of turn the corner on some of the challenges. So you might just sort of provide that peace of mind with additional video monitoring, which could be AI Talkdown, and just to ensure that vehicles are safe and the common areas aren't threatened. So, it's really, I always look at it like a puzzle. Like let's put the puzzle down, tell me about the circumstances, and then we'll provide the pieces that give you the solution that you're looking for.
Yeah, I would hope the takeaway for all of you is that this is not to think that there's something that's not here for you. As you meet with the various vendors, they can help understand where you're at and kind of figure out what might be the next logical step for you to take. Noel, when you're looking at the broad experience and the many different customers that ADT services, what threat patterns are you most commonly called on to be able to help address, and what expectations are property owners bringing to the table?
Yeah, for us, when we're trying to get in front of you guys, and like I mentioned in the intro, we're trying to sell the in-unit ecosystem. However, the calls that we get is typically what you see up here on this chart here, which is unauthorized access. How can we get people into the building and out, and how do we know who's coming in, get the people out that we don't want in the building or on the property? So access control. We also see things like what Mike mentioned in his presentation, loitering. Are they hanging around? How do they get in? And then how long are they waiting for? So video could play a big role in that. Typically, you see this more on the build to rent side, which is squatters, but we're seeing and getting calls for especially B and C properties that they may be next to a homeless camp, or maybe the neighborhood is transitioning, and so now we're seeing squatters in units. Obviously, they're having to call maintenance folks to come and remove them or call police, but one of the ways that we can help with that is an alarm security system. So we know, hey, it's going off, what's going on. But those 3 right there, when it comes to threats and security, those are the 3 that we see the most.
And I'll just add,
I was going to turn it right over to Zach. Yeah.
One of the biggest issues we have in a lot of our buildings are unauthorized people following other people into the building. They probably usually know somebody in the building, but if we don't have monitoring on the cameras to be able to track that if an incident occurs, we're left in the dark covering the cost of whatever damage might be. So it's really important for us to be able to track back, not only know when incidents happen, but be able to track back and try to figure out who they know in the building, where they came from, and where our vulnerabilities are.
And unauthorized access could be a common area, it could be a pool, a boyfriend, girlfriend live in a unit, now they're broken up and only one person's in the lease. So these are questions that we get asked, like how can you help us correct this or get ahead of it?
What are some of the solutions that we're seeing for tailgating? Because I think that's what's described, and you have someone going through access and then someone kind of coming in right after them. What are some of the emerging solutions to address that particular issue that you're seeing in the industry?
AI is a big piece of it. There's access control systems now that you can put a pair of contacts on doors. So it'll tell you if the door wasn't closed all the way, or it'll trigger with a camera where it'll send you a snippet of kind of what you were pointing out. Hey, 2 people came in when the door opened versus one. Right.
The AI technology and some of face recognition technology, I know this is kind of moving up the scale a bit, but I know when I visited a company within the last few months, they had face recognition that when you came in, they were immediately able to recognize, do we know this face? Is this employee? Is this a resident? This is a business, is it an employee? And we went into the back room, the security control room. It had up on the screen, me and my business partner that were visiting, that had our faces, and unknowns. And like, we don't know who these people are. That type of technology is evolving to make it easier. If that's something you need to know, is like, when, do we know this face? Do they actually live here versus are they a guest? And at least get them on the radar. I know there's technology now as well that across multiple camera systems that you're able to go in and say, show me video of anyone who is wearing a red hoodie, and it can immediately pop up, where we had individuals in a red hoodie, and then show as they move from camera to camera and time code, rather than sitting through and watching hours and hours of video. That technology is there, and it's starting to fold its way into some of the specific needs in this industry. As we look at some of the use cases we've already talked about, the mobile app-based access control, visitor passes. How do you deal with allowing people to temporarily come in, whether they're delivering food or whether they are coming to walk the dog? We'll show some examples. The AI-powered video surveillance, license plate recognition kind of ties into that. Figuring out when there's tampers or forced entry. Smart package access, that's definitely a security and safety issue. Amenity access control to shared spaces. Emergency alerts. Having audit trails so that when you do have an issue, you can track back and say, okay, who came in, what time, when did they leave. The perimeter monitoring around the facility and the property. So the question I'd have for Mike is, what technologies are you see that are changing the game in smart security, and how are you translating those to be used on the ground? Not only what you have now, but maybe what's in the pipeline.
At the risk of being redundant, it's this model of safety tech. We talk about smart, we talk about secure, but is it, what's delivering safe? What's delivering safety, right? So, what a game changer has been Safety Button over the last several months. A game changer has been AI Talkdown over the last several months. It continues to evolve. I liked your example of red hoodie at 12 p.m. Like, that technology is there, and we can even feed highlight reels. The AI mechanism can say, okay, like, here are some things that we think are, we as if it's human, but here are some things that are interesting that happen throughout the community, and feed that to the management team. That says, here's sort of the highlight reel for the day, and that might trigger tailgaters. That might trigger disruption at the pickleball courts, which could be a thing, right? Like, so there's a lot of different things that we can proactively send via AI, just based on some settings that are set up at the very initiation of the implementation. So, some of the, like, what's coming, I think it's adoption. Like, more folks that are using this makes it smarter, more effective, and then you start to see risk reduction take place at the property, which will create more implementation and deployments because it's, wow, this works. I'd say like the adoption curve, we have our early adopters that have started. We're sort of in the big middle right now with this type of tech, but I think we're probably in the earlier stage on video and safety buttons. So that's what's coming. It's here.
Yeah,
it's here.
The technology exists. It's how to get it into a usable delivery, at the individual level, and then scalable level across multifamily.
It's adoption across, folks here having breakfast. Right.
So we've got one of the videos of this. Here we go.
Stop intruders in their tracks with Alarm.com's new AI-powered crime prevention solution, AI Deterrence. A combines the latest AI innovations with Alarm.com's industry-leading video analytics. When a trespasser is detected, the adaptive verbal warnings create the impression of a live operator, calling out their clothing and location on the property.
Person wearing a black jacket and blue jeans, you are being recorded. Leave immediately or the police will be called.
A80 can be used as a standalone service or alongside the remote video monitoring console to build a mode of protection around your home or business.
I was going to ask you after watching this whether or not you could change the tone of voice, so I'm glad you addressed that. That was definitely aggressive and it seemed appropriate for that particular use case. But yeah, when someone in the pool at a luxury, that's not the voice you would want. You talk about the training, and then we talk about artificial intelligence, but one of the other terms you'll hear used a lot is machine learning. And where the machine learning comes in is just you described. The industry has lots of data over the last 20 years of being able to say what was video behavior that led up to an alert, an alarm, a fire, a break-in, and using machine learning to be able to go back to that data and then to be able to predict is starting to yield benefits. I went to on-site to one of the top 5 security companies within the past year, and it's totally changed their monitoring stations too, in the sense that the video monitoring, where before, you can imagine a security guard sitting in front of 24 videos and being asked to just pay attention when something happens, that because we have so much history, they've been able to use the machine learning to be able to say, instead of having to have someone watch, they let the machine learning identify, here's something we think might be an issue, and then that pops up to an operator, and then they can verify, like, yep, that's an issue, trigger an alarm, come over. That technology is kind of rolling down as well. And the payback for the end user is you're able to deliver higher value of service at a lower cost because you're able to throw in the automation. So Noel, what are you guys seeing as some of the technologies that are changing the game? How are you seeing them used on the ground from an ADT perspective?
Yeah. Now, first of all, I got to give you some kudos because you did a great job on the presentation. And just for if you guys want some fun honesty, we didn't really communicate before the panel, and one of my big takeaways as far as what's coming is also a safety button that we call So Secure. So, like Mike said, the technology is already here. So we call it a different name, but at the end of the day, it's mobile security. It's mobile security you can take with you. Very popular in student housing, but like Mike said, it's already here. We already partner with companies like Uber and Lyft, where if you're inside of an Uber and the guy's making you uncomfortable, you can text an ADT monitored person and say, I'm in a Lyft and I'm feeling uncomfortable. They might say, we acknowledge that you're in a situation, on standby, let us know what you want us to do. You'll get some automated chats back. Now, you could also make a phone call. Hey, I'm talking to a person in the monitoring center live. There's no threat yet, but I feel very uncomfortable. We've had conversations with leasing agents where they might have an uncomfortable situation in a hallway. They may be providing eviction papers. They might be in a argument about rent or whatever the case may be. The advantage here is that you have somebody that can dispatch police just like that, and then be able to pinpoint your location just from a mobile phone. That's what we're excited about. Everything else, 5 years ago, we were showing folks thermostats and logs and how they integrate. And at that point, I felt like we were getting excited. But now with technologies like this is definitely a game changer.
And I like that aspect that it's not just for the residents, it can be for the employees that are working at your properties to help them feel safe. I mean, I imagine some of the use cases you might have within some of your properties where that would come in handy.
It would be great. I think in the affordable space, it's implementation of some of these things is difficult to justify. But certainly on the staff protection side, that's a wonderful feature. On the resident side, because we can't increase rents based on some of these features, it's not really applicable to what we can do. But a lot of the stuff we've talked about can be implemented if we can justify how it impacts our M&O costs, bring down operating. If we can do that, then we can start to implement these things.
So let's pause for a moment, maybe go a little bit off script. As you're talking to someone in Zach's position, what are some of the first ROI use case discussions that you would have to bring in additional technology in this type of situation?
Yeah, we work with affordable. So I think you had a chance to chat with Tarla. So we're looking forward to seeing how that conversation progresses. But we have ROI calculators where we actually rely on you to hey, help give us some of the inputs. We have the logic behind the scenes that say, X plus Y equals Z in terms of value. And we can change those inputs based on your operating model. But not in all cases does this require a rent lift to yield an ROI. It just depends on what challenges you're trying to solve. And then the solution that we can put together for you to give you that result. So we run those scenarios all the time, and you'd be surprised at how surprised people are when they come back and say, "Wait a minute, hold on. Like, so I don't have to lift rent, but I can still do this." We might have to have some CapEx conversations versus OpEx discussion, figure out what the time horizon is on the ROI. But there's certainly opportunity to do it without necessarily requiring a rent lift, which is important to point out.
And I think that was the conversation that we actually had, was about how to analyze our current portfolio and find those opportunities. But it's not just convincing us, because then we need to go back and convince our funders, which are generally jurisdictions, to let us change our underwriting accordingly. So we need that data to help us support our argument.
Absolutely.
Which it sounds like is there. So
Right.
We're excited about that.
Great.
Other thoughts on helping put the use case together?
Yeah, I think Mike said it best, and some of you guys may have seen Taylor walking around here with PropTech IQ. I mean, he's a great partner. It's a complete third-party company. And when you mentioned those calculators, that's a great way to put your numbers in and see just the cash on cash or just some of the data that he's able to provide.
So giving you the tool set you need to help you evaluate that, and also to make the arguments to other stakeholders within your properties that may need to be persuaded to make the capital investment to move forward with adoption of change. Once you've made the decision that, okay, we're ready to do this, rolling out something like this across multiple units at a single property, and then perhaps looking at multiple properties can be a challenge. And as we look at some of the implementation hurdles and some of the steps that need to be implemented in a successful way, Noel, what are some of the keys to ensuring that you can take some smart security systems or some of the smart technology to make sure they're remaining effective both in a successful deployment and then after deployment as well?
Yeah, I think it really starts at the pre-planning. That's really where it begins. So anything after, once it's installed, it's already too late. If it's a retrofit, we're doing site surveys. We're looking at the doors. We're looking at cell connectivity. Are we on managed Wi-Fi or cell? Are we looking at thermostats? We've come into situations where not all the thermostats are wired or configured the same way when you terminate as compared to the back. There's different hallways that could cause cell or issues. So are we really prepping for that? Now in new construction, are we talking to who's going to manage it? Is the company vertically integrated, and do they have those partners that are setting you up for success? And what I mean by that, and I think Mike touched it on the beginning of it, is if you have an access control system and you're also putting in an intercom system, can they speak to each other, or are they going to have two apps? down the line, if you're going to do a long-term hold, do you plan on adding that ecosystem inside the units? Are you adding cameras, and is that integrate into the same platform, or is it going to be two separate ones? So that's a way that you can future-proof, but it all starts at the very beginning. We talked about at ADT, it's the blue octagon. Everybody thinks security. Oh yeah, security at our clubhouse. Oh yeah, our shop needs security. And we often get calls for security, access control, video surveillance. Very few people call us for the in-unit ecosystem. However, that's in recent years, that's changing. Now they're calling and saying, hey, we're having issues with people to come out, and that's where our 200 branches can help. It's being able to come out and service those issues when they happen.
Zach, as you've deployed changes from a technology perspective, whether it's security or others, what are some of the keys you found to be able to successfully deploy it within a property?
I think the most important thing is finding good partners that are responsive, and training staff on the systems. We can do a new construction or renovations, we can put in the coolest tech out there, but if the staff doesn't understand it and how to utilize it properly, then we're not getting the value out of it that we put into it. So,
Mike, any other keys you see as you're deploying this with your new partners?
Yeah, I like what Noel said. If it's already installed, it's too late. I agree. I think, if I'm sitting in your chair, I would be really sort of mindful of interviewing the provider on how they guide you through the process, to ensure that all the stakeholders are a part of the conversation. It's not just let's put locks on and thermostats and run like hell. Like it's got to be a part of your strategy, and then understanding maybe blind spots that you may have in the strategy, or we should be asking questions about who are the stakeholders at the corporate level. Let's talk about utilization at the site level. What are we trying to accomplish? And then providing a very detailed footprint of here's what's going to happen. This is a great image, actually. Here's what's going to happen along the way, and providing you with that assurance that there's actually a service model behind the software and the hardware. Because software interplay is challenging. So again, going back to that unified approach, like kind of the fewer apps, the better. So try to unify, and then really take a look at the guide here and make sure that all stakeholders are involved, and that I like the question that when it gets asked to us, what are we not asking you? And then we'll be very honest about that, and then that might unlock something that maybe wasn't discovered initially, and then we solve for it and communicate it along the way.
Usually it's the support after the fact. I mean, I know I'm beating this one to death, but it's just top of mind. We just recently did an audit trail with our support team, and 65% of the time they're in trainings with staff. And this is, we know that there's a lot of turnover on sites. Manager gets promoted, leasing agent, she moves to regional, or leasing agent moves to property manager, or they did a great job at these 3-4 properties. Now they're going to move them to 5 different ones that may be underperforming to lift them up. And so there's constant change, and they may be taking on properties that have new technology. So we're constantly retraining. So you want to make sure that your partner has the support to be able to provide that.
So going back to kind of establishing the use case, particularly if you're in a situation, like Zach's, where you can't raise the rent, what you're looking at is, what are some of the costs we're incurring when we don't have good security and safety in place? And oftentimes those costs result as incidents that happen that will then become claims from an insurance perspective. And so as we look at the cycle for this risk mitigation, which Mike mentioned before, when you make the investment in the security, you are having an actual risk reduction. That's going to happen. You're going to have improved operational outcomes. You're hoping to be able to close that loop and then to see an insurance premium opportunity with that being lowered. But sometimes that can feel challenging, especially when you're dealing with a larger policy. I know at a single family residential, you guys have a partnership, I think, with State Farm, where that value has been recognized. Sometimes that can be a little bit challenging as you're going to a larger scale as to how will that directly translate. And so sometimes there's that question of, are we getting that value between there? Zach, I think you mentioned this. What are some of the challenges you've had with insurers recognizing the value of security systems, and what do you think needs to change?
I think the problem is that there's a lack of transparency in a lot of cases. We deal with brokers. They send us questionnaires about our properties. There are questions about what security features we're providing. I don't know what level of information they're actually looking for. I give them as much as I can. And then they come back with a premium number. And I'm like, well, what went into that? How can I bring that down? And it's very vague. And they really can't tell me what aspects of our security and access control is actually impacting those premiums. And so it feels a little bit like a black box. That's our biggest problem.
So response from our experts here, what are ways you're seeing to be able to help bridge that gap and help ensure that they're seeing reduction in premiums after making this investment?
It's tough because we get asked this question quite a bit. It's like, can I expect a discount?
Yeah.
and it's tough because, I'm not sure.
It's not a one size fits all.
Right. I know that the residents can. We work with an affordable group, and we provide alarm certificates, and actually it's just on the website. You can click the alarm certificate and you get 20% off your renter's insurance. But there's a lot that comes into play. I mean, security is just one of them. There's leak detection as well. I know got a partner in Dallas-Fort Worth, ASMC, who they recently, they have leaks sensors in every single one of their units, and they were able to get a lower premium because of it. I just don't know what went into it from their end. And to be honest with you, I'd be speaking out of turn if I.
And I think part of it is that and this is kind of why they drove this in here, is that you're going to have data. You're going to have data from before. What were some of the issues you had before? Once you've invested and you're getting 6 months, 12 months worth of data, having that data and then being able to share it with your brokers and saying, here's what we've invested in, that realization probably is not going to happen on day one, but it's going to happen as you're able to share that data. You have that transparency.
But to Zach's point, I mean, they're not even asking for specifics.
No,
right?
it's a one-page questionnaire. There's one question on there about access control and security. Do you have a security guard on site? That's it.
So if Mike sends you all the data on the HVAC systems, on the efficiencies, and maybe how it's overcycling or running,
I can attach that. I doubt anyone's looking at it.
So I think that's an opportunity that for those here at the table and those here at the conference to see how we can try to close that gap, because that's an opportunity to be able to create more value in terms of the use case.
And I would hope that like some of those insurance companies would have been at an event like this. So I want to know that they know what's coming down the pipeline and that they're going to change the risk evaluations accordingly. But I didn't see them here.
Okay. No, and those type of changes don't happen at once. It's that transparency, the data, and as they see what we essentially want is we want to see some new checkboxes on that form to say, this, do you have AI video? Do you have this? Because we've seen partners that do have that reduction in events afterwards. Okay, we also talked about this next slide a little bit when we talk about integration. Lots of different things that are out there from a smart ecosystem, and ideally, companies here want to have a dashboard to be able to see all those things at once. You mentioned on your slide deck the integration with the various systems that are being used for property management. What are some of the best ways, Noel, you're seeing security being integrated into the larger systems, and what do you think is still in the future as well?
Yeah, I mean, what's out there right now is mostly just automation. Security is, for us, it's huge, and obviously we provide it, but we're one of the only groups out there that can provide security with the automation. So if you're talking 9 out of 10 groups that you talk to, it's going to be thermostat, lock, maybe a leaks detection. If it's Class A, you might have a light bulb or two, or light switch, I'm sorry. So integrating security, sometimes it doesn't even come top of mind because, if they're getting 3 bids, it's like, well, this guy offers security, but these other 2 aren't. So do I even need it? And so it's also at a different cost point, right? But it's key. And to go back to the point, if you don't want a security platform and then a different automation platform, you want it all rolled into one. You want to have it in that same dashboard that becomes really a tool for your staff. I talked earlier about some of the squatting issues that we're seeing more of. Well, now you can get that message, or your maintenance is changing out a filter. Well, if it's gotten monitored alarm, how do I access that unit? Being able to have a specific PIN code for them becomes essential.
Temporary access to
right.
be able to, again, using the smart lock, you don't have to fumble for keys.
Not just the lock, but disable the security system.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have a quick video on how they integrate. It's really quick.
Welcome to ADT Multifamily, smart home technology for your community. The most respected name in security allows you to easily manage hundreds of units in one location, all connected and accessible from your phone. An ADT Smart Home Community offers a premium experience for residents and prospects. Self-guided property tours of vacant units lets prospective residents schedule and tour available units on their time. We're ADT Multifamily, an end-to-end smart community solution.
So as you can see on the app, it looks very familiar. I mean, the back end, we've been using alarm.com for a number of years, partners with Mike as well. Looks very familiar, but it's all in one. So security, automation, access control, video, all on the palm of your hands.
Mike, anything you'd add to that question as well, as to, how is it being integrated with the broader systems, and what success you've seen there?
I'd almost wordsmith that and say the smart property tech should be the ecosystem. That should be the sort of the central hub, and then allow that to integrate with your PMS softwares, with your CRMs. That's all part of it. Again, if you want to occupancy through Yardi, for example, do that and stay in there and make sure that your provider integrates with it. But in terms of safety and security, the ecosystem is that, and it's what Noel showed you. And then as you incorporate more video, more security and safety mechanisms, like that should all be in that dashboard for you. So you have that single pane of glass to sort of manage the business and get insights, and then sort of set up your reporting structure to say, what do I want fed to me, and what do I want to proactively go see?
With a minute left, we'll do a quick fire across our three panelists as we look into the future. What is some of the things you see on the horizon that excite you the most about ADT's, their roadmap, PointCentral's roadmap, and then kind of what are you excited about opportunities for your properties?
Yeah, I'm excited about the future. Just that I see in some of the boardrooms, and I see some familiar faces, so I'll just repeat it, but the space is really fragmented right now. I mean, there's a number of companies. I mean, we attend a ton of trade shows, and it's tech everywhere, and everybody's saying the same thing, right? We're going to reduce cost and increase efficiency, but are we asking those tough questions about the partners and support on the back end? And more importantly, where I see it going in the future is going to be integrations. Who plays nice with each other? Because the reality is that one group might choose company A, another group might choose company B, but they need them to work together, and because they're not going to want to have two apps. And the companies that are going to set themselves up for success in the future are going to be the ones that play nice with others and have those tie-ins.
Mike?
Yeah, it's funny, we talk about future proofing, and I think sometimes the stereotype is that we're looking for the next gadget or the next thing. I think what the industry is craving is clarity. And just trying to figure, okay, who can I depend on to make this strategy work? And so I think it's become more adopted over the last several years. We're starting to get that clarity on what delivers, who you can count on, and then it becomes scalable from there. So it's probably like a boring answer in terms of crystal ball, but I really, when the conversations we have, I don't see somebody craving the next thing to put on the wall, because that's another thing to manage. It's really the clarity of if we build out this strategy or we advance this strategy further, who can we count on to deliver on it?
I like that. Zach, your thoughts?
I think that's exactly right. I think the unification of all the various technologies into one usable center, and the support behind that, so that our property management teams and building staff know exactly who to go to cover a whole range of different technology issues, instead of having to try to pull up the email from last week, be like, who was I supposed to call for that? So it's important to simplify things for them and so that buildings can operate.
Well, thank you everyone for your thoughts today. Please join me in a round of applause for our panelists.